Another rough loss for the Heat, but the silver lining, well, they didn't squander a lead in the fourth quarter because, well, they never had it to begin with. But they were also outshot, outmuscled, outrebounded, and basically outplayed. We break down the game on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Have a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to talk about what comes next for the Heat and a surprising silver lining from tonight's game. But first, we're recording this Wednesday night after the Heat's 119-104 loss to the Clippers. Quick little breakdown here. No Kawhi Leonard. Clippers on the second night of a back-to-back after losing in New Orleans on Tuesday night. But that did not stop the Heat from going down by as many as 13 points in the first half. Pelle Larsson gave them a spark off the bench in the third quarter. Not Kel'el Ware's best game. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the Heat hung in the game for the most part. Andrew Wiggins, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero had a nice little spurt at the end of the third quarter. But they just couldn't get over the hump. They made Ivica Zubac look like prime Shaquille O'Neal in this game. And the Heat lose their fifth game in a row. It's now their longest losing streak of the season, David. What part of that is interesting to you?
You know, the fact that I loved hearing about the South Beach flu when it was a thing, and now it no longer seems to exist. And I know on the second night of a back-to-back, it doesn't really get a chance to set in, and you can't really catch the flu if you're flying in late and stuff like that. But
the Clippers
Miami
clearly didn't spend any time on Bourbon Street last night, nor any time in South Beach when they landed.
Yeah, no longer able to capitalize on what should be an obvious weakness when the team is flying in late.
This is a great swerve by you. It actually hurts the Heat to be playing opponents on the second night of a back-to-back. This was a scheduled loss not for the Clippers, but for the Heat.
Right. Yeah, normally a team comes in exhausted, they're tired, they're kind of already, mourning the loss from the night before.
Right.
You figure, okay, maybe you can capitalize them. Not this Heat team. That's not how they're built. They give up games well before another team can blow it themselves. Like I was waiting for the Clippers to get tired in the fourth quarter, maybe stop shooting 60% from the field. But no, not this Heat team. That's not how they're doing things this year.
Zubac, like I said, looked like prime Shaq in this game. And he's awesome. Good. And he had a borderline all-star case when we were doing all that stuff. But he was dominant in this one. Nobody could push him off his spot. He was grabbing every rebound. He ends up finishing with 26 points, 14 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds, shot 75% overall. The Heat just didn't have an answer for him, and this was not Kel'el Ware's best game. We'll touch on that here in a second. It also wasn't Bam's best game, and this felt like more of a retreat back to the Bam Adebayo of the slumping days, where he just didn't have it going, and he was outplayed by, again, Zubac is an awesome center. He's not as good as Bam, or is not supposed to be as good as Bam, but he was way better than Bam in this matchup. Again, a retreat back to those days where Bam would kind of get outplayed by sort of the more bigger, bruising centers out there.
It's a good point. They were both outplayed by Zubac, and when either of them was trying to box him out or guard him, it was a very futile attempt by both, which is more surprising from Bam. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about Ware later, but Bam, I think, really regressed in tonight's game. Like he was not getting a lot of touches, and you have to credit the Clippers defense for kind of sniffing out Miami's pick and roll game, but they were hounding Duncan Robinson all night. They were making things more difficult for Tyler, although he did wind up putting up 30 plus points. But in terms of how they were able to feed Bam for those touches that he's been getting so frequently of late, that wasn't really a possibility. So there were moments there where I did think Bam was a little lacking in aggression, like where we've seen him kind of in that mid-range area, and we've seen him be more aggressive of late and either driving to the rim or getting to a sweet spot for the jumper or the floater. That wasn't the case tonight. I think he was a little shell shocked maybe by the size differential between him and Zubac. So it does feel a lot like not just even the Bam of earlier this season, but the Bam of a few seasons ago, like when
Yeah.
he was clearly
Yeah.
being outplayed by bigger centers. Like he would have problems with Gobert and
Yeah.
Jokic and other players like that, and Embiid even. And so this Brook Lopez, like that's what it felt like. Yeah, that the size was just it felt larger to Bam and something that he was not able to overcome. And so it's a little disappointing. He was playing more, it felt like he was being more in that center spot where he was being asked to do things and go up bigger players, and he wasn't able to capitalize.
Yeah, part of it was Ware was essentially unplayable for long stretches in this game. And Bam really had to just be a center where he had to be at the glass, competing for rebounds, all these things, because otherwise the Heat were getting crushed there. So I think that was part of it. And you already mentioned it, but it's worth highlighting it again. The Clippers basically flattening out Miami's pick and roll attack. And then because Miami was playing from behind, they had to put their three-point shooters out there. That means Davion Mitchell's not out there as much, and he's sort of quickly become maybe the best guy feeding Bam. And then with Chris Dunn hounding Tyler Hero up and down the court, Hero was having a hard time just getting the ball in his hands, let alone trying to get it also into Bam's hands on entry passes or getting into that pick and roll game. So I credit the Clippers defense more for Bam having an off night, but you'd still expect a little bit more from your star player. But I don't want to bury the lead here, David. Pelle Larsson. Only one player on the Heat had a positive plus minus in this game, and it was Pelle Larsson. He looked great. He looked great in this game. He was diving for loose balls. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take you into the arena here, fans, where he dives to the floor at half court, battles for that ball. The Clippers keep trying to call a timeout. He's not going to let him because he won't let them get possession for long enough in order to call the timeout. He finally gets the ball, throws it out. It pops out of this dog pile to Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier, thank God, makes the three-pointer.
Yes.
And I have not heard Kaseya Center erupt in that way
Since the playoffs.
in what feels like all of 2025.
Oh yeah. Phenomenal effort from him. And that was such a fun play. And that was, I know Spo talked about it after the game, but it felt a lot more like what Miami has been missing for a lot of this losing streak and for most of the post Jimmy Butler era, that just the constant effort, the never giving up, the diving on the floor, like not just once, but twice to make things happen. That was so much fun. Like that was such a gritty performance. And we've talked about Davion a lot, about the kind of effort he had. Like he had a really nice play tonight where he intercepted a pass that was being lazily thrown in bounds, and he kind of just stole it right away and was able to get a rebound when the Clippers were building their early lead. But Pelle's effort overall was just great. Not only that play in particular, which is a phenomenal one, and Eric Reed on the broadcast couldn't stop talking about the play of the season. He called it. I don't know if I'd go that far, but
he called it the play of the season.
The hustle play of the season. Yes.
Oh, that's
certainly
a little bit
the hustle play of
different.
the
Okay,
night.
the hustle play of the season. Okay,
I mean that's fair.
It's in the running.
Fair.
I can take that. Okay.
It is. At the same time, though, I think there were a number of times where he made a couple of really nice recognition plays, like doubling somebody with a ball up top.
Yes.
And that kind of forced bad passes that Miami was able to, either Tyler Hero on one play. I think Andrew Wiggins had another one. Maybe Bam had a third. But there were a couple of
one
doubles
in the second
there
quarter was my favorite, where Zubac has the ball on the low block, and I think it was Ware that was in front of him.
Over.
And then he waited for like one or two dribbles, and then he went and quickly doubled, and then Zubac is under duress, and he throws it up, and then Wiggins picks it off and then scores at the other end. Yeah.
I think there was another one like that where I think it might have been Harden with the ball in his hands, and Pelle again doubles him, and then he kind of lazily throws it over, and Tyler's able to intercept that for a dunk. So that was a nice breakaway play for Tyler. But yeah, Pelle with some really nice recognition. This is why he's getting minutes. Unfortunately, it was also on a night when you weren't getting that kind of production from other key players. So it was not something that was sustainable or was able to carry this team to great heights. So you need more of that. You're not getting a lot of that. And look, you were at the game. You saw this team. We talked a lot about the emotions kind of driving the season and kind of affecting them now. Like, what's your take on this? I hate to feel so reductive and kind of all-encompassing in saying this, but it does feel like this team has forgotten how to win. Was that a vibe that you picked up in terms of their overall effort and what happened in the fourth quarter, where they kind of just gave up and they just couldn't do it anymore?
I think that's a little bit of it, right? And this unit, by the way, like this roster has never won together for a sustained amount of time. So the fact that they've forgotten, like, I don't even know if forgotten how is the way to do it. I still think Bam, this game maybe not included in the resume here, but the way Bam has been playing these last couple of weeks is borderline inspirational. Like, he is doing all of the things that they're not getting, that Pelle Larsson is getting so much shine for in this game. And one quick thing on Larsson, like, he looked great.
Yes.
And he really jumped off the screen. And then you look at the box score, 7 points on 3 of 8 shooting, 4 assists. Fine.
Yeah,
but
solid.
You know what I mean? But not even scoring in double digits. And he just leapt off the screen in such a way where it felt like he probably had 18 points in this game. And we were impressed with the hustle stuff. And that stuff used to be a given for the Heat. And now we're impressed by it. And that's sort of the thing that's missing here. And so I thought it was really telling when Eric Spoelstra at the end of the game, when asked about Pelle, basically said, that's what we needed. We needed that jolt. That's why he got in there. But frankly, we need more of that 1 through 15. And that is sort of the thing that jumped off to me is we were so impressed by a guy diving on the floor.
Yeah.
That used to be a given in Miami. You used to get taken out of the game if you didn't dive for a loose ball that was in your range, right? And now we're like, oh my God, this is the hustle play of the season. You know, this used to be the standard, and now it's the exception.
It's basically Larson and Mitchell. And other than that, I mean, Bam, pretty solid defense overall. I don't know if hustle necessarily is something that translates with his game, but Ware,
if you consider the box outs and stuff, to me that's hustle. Like, that's more of what he's doing. Yeah, he's
I think Ware and Tyler, unfortunately, and then again you get Duncan, Aime, like they're not doing those little things.
Playing hard, but they're not playing to the Heat standard of hard. And that's sort of what the difference, I guess, has been. The Heat are now in the middle of their longest losing streak of the season. It might only get worse. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save even more. I know a lot of people rely on it, but guess what? It adds up. This helps you keep track of that. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Before we get to the upcoming schedule here, a little bit of a spotlight on Kel'el Ware here because I think it's been a really interesting week for him, David. Tough few games, right? Yes. Against Charlotte, the Hornets stink. No excuse for losing that game. But in terms of a matchup for Ware, that's a difficult one. 7'2" Mark Williams, Yusuf Nurkic, and then having to play Zubac tonight. These are big, impressive, physical centers And I don't necessarily think that we would describe Kel'el Ware in that way. And I asked Eric Spoelstra about that after the game, and you can tell it's something that he'd been thinking about. And I think there's going to be a lot for Ware to take away from this week. Because the terminology that Eric Spoelstra used after the game was, okay, it's fine to be in the weight room, and he obviously needs to do that stuff, but then it's functional strength. How do you use those gains in the weight room to your advantage? How do you battle on the boards? How do you become a rim protector when you're not the 7-foot fly swatter, but you're somebody that could be a little bit more stout on the interior and deter shots at the rim that way? And I think this is going to be a learning lesson for Ware. Obviously he's going to have to get bigger, but I do think there's something to be said about the positioning and just sort of the physicality of the game. And if anything, this just teaches Kel'el how much more muscle he's going to have to put on in order to battle with some of these guys.
It's, we were criticized for maybe not being all in on Kel'el Ware at the start of the season. And I think we're seeing this now. Like, there were certainly moments there where he was catching teams off guard. But I think over the course of the season, a lot of teams have understood what he's capable of and where he's most dangerous. And they're smart, or in tonight's case, strong enough to kind of mitigate his overall positive impact. And I think that's fine. Like, this is what he's supposed to go through. He's supposed to go through these kinds of growing pains. He's not expected to be a star. Maybe he'll reach that point, although I personally don't know if that's capable of something he's capable of, not based on what we're seeing as a rookie. Like, he's had moments, he's certainly shown throughout the course of the season, but he does need to certainly build a lot in terms of his overall approach to the game, his body, and how he uses that out on the floor to impact winning moments and make winning plays. I think is going to be a huge determining factor. So it's a great learning opportunity. That's how he has to see it. And I'm sure that he will, because it seems like that's how he's kind of approached the whole season, is this is a great opportunity, and he knows he has to learn, and he's been very humble about that whole approach. But yeah, I think on nights like tonight and what we saw against Charlotte, you can see that he's clearly outplayed. And I think that's to be expected for somebody who is as young as he is, and and has the obvious weaknesses that he does in terms of his overall physical strength.
Yeah, I mean, this should be expected. It would have been really surprising if he was pushing Jusuf Nurkic and Zubac around in the paint, right? We'd be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Right.
No, I mean, this was on the scouting report, right? This is why he was considered raw, as everybody knew it was going to take him not just by 1 year. It's probably going to take him 2 or 3 years to put on the weight that he's going to need to put on to battle these guys. But fortunately for him, he's next to somebody like Bam Adebayo, who's extremely strong. And there's going to be ways where the Heat are going to be able to kind of do this by committee. And I don't think they did a good enough job with that tonight, because, again, Zubac looked like prime Shaq. But there's going to be nights where they're going to be able to do that a little bit better. So I think that's part of it. If I'm looking for a bright side here, it's sort of what you were saying. This should be expected, right?
Yeah.
It's not a between the ears thing with this guy. It's just he's going to need time to add the strength, get into a grown man body. And then once he's got that, a star player, that's not his skill set. You think about star players. Star players are guys that start plays. He's a play finisher. He's an elite lob threat. He's a guy who could, make a three as a trailing big man in transition. That's the stuff. And he does have all the things that you're looking for in terms of a complementary player next to Bam long term. But let's look at the upcoming schedule here. The Heat have lost 5 in a row for the first time this season. Here's their upcoming 10 games. Boston at home, Friday night. Okay. They just lost to the Thunder. They're probably going to be a little bit motivated to get back on the right side of things on Friday.
Thursday night, South Beach flu? Yes? Maybe? No.
Might be their only hope. Memphis on the second night of a back-to-back in Memphis on Saturday night. Then they have to go to New York Monday in New York. The Knicks have not been playing as well as late, but neither is Miami. The Knicks have been a better team all year. The Pistons on Wednesday, they're awesome.
At home or at Detroit?
In Detroit, at home. I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah, maybe at home against the Houston Rockets, they're sliding a little bit, but they're also starting to figure things out a little bit as they get healthy. Pants
off the Phoenix Suns tonight. So
did they? I didn't even see that. Okay, so that's great. Versus Charlotte at home, they can't lose to the Hornets twice in 1 year, can they?
No. I'm going to go out on a limb and say no.
Our old friend Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors, Atlanta,
Oof.
Philadelphia, and Washington. That's to round out the month.
Atlanta, Philadelphia,
3 and 7 over the next 10 games.
I've got 4 and 6.
Okay, so we're talking about 33 and 42 or 32 and 43 by the end of the month. So we're talking about 10 or 11 games under 500.
Not good.
Yeah, not ideal. I don't think that was part of the plan. Yeah.
No, and this isn't even how we've joked in the past, like where you see an upcoming slate, they'll lose one where they're supposed to win, and they'll win one where they're supposed to lose. The win one where they're supposed to lose ain't coming. So, I mean, they might eke out 4 wins here, and I
Who
think
are
they're
the
going to
4
lose
that
the
you
next
had,
3
by
games.
the way?
I've got the Detroit game.
Okay, so you got them winning Detroit. Okay, that was the only difference. So I have them winning Charlotte, Philly, Washington.
Yes.
Yeah. They could beat
Actually,
the
you know
Hawks.
what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I might have them at 5 and 5. Actually, now that I look at it, I think
Ooh.
they might beat Atlanta.
Don't tell David he can't dream.
Yeah, the next 3 games though, they might be losses. And that's
the point
kind of
is, like, this team needs an 8-2 stretch, not a 5-5 stretch. That's what this team needs, and it just doesn't. It's not happening this month, right?
No.
So, and the crazy part about this is the team's healthy now.
Yeah.
The only guys we were missing tonight is, no offense, Alec Burks. Nikola Jovic is still out with the broken hand. That is a significant loss to the rotation, but
Sure.
if Nikola Jovic, all due respect, is not the difference between a team on their way to 10 games under 500 and just peachy as a 6th seed in the playoffs, right? Like you're not one Nikola Jovic away from those things. And that's the tough part here. But coming up, we have a few listener questions, including why didn't Davion Mitchell play more in the 4th quarter if we're all so excited about him? We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. If you've got your eye on a few underdogs this year, well, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com. Get in on the college hoops actions all tournament long. We'll be right back.
You like anybody in the tournament? Have you paid any attention to the SEC? Is supposed to be really good.
Yeah, the Gators, right? Duke.
Oh no,
Duke.
boo. Auburn is supposed to be good, aren't they?
Yeah.
I guess Duke's good with. Look, Heat fans have a reason to watch the tournament this year.
You know, last time
these are the guys that I like.
Yeah, I know. The last time I feel like I really had a interest in watching this from a Heat perspective, I feel was an eternity ago. It was 2008, and I remember watching Michael Beasley in the tournament and going up against and Derrick Rose and being like really unimpressed with either of those two guys. I mean, I know Beasley had a long career, although it was kind of up and down, and Derrick Rose obviously cut short by injury. But I don't know. There's always somebody, that kind of emerges that winds up being better than the players that you're supposed to watch out for. I think that's basically what's already stood out to me is that you'll watch the games and it'll be somebody that you're not expecting to pop. That's just going to be dynamite because they recognize what's at stake, and that's a gamer. That's what you need. That's what you're looking for. So, I mean, given Miami's unclear future in the upcoming draft, I wouldn't look at the top 5-ish players. It's probably more along the lines of 7 through 12, and that being the case,
or the
you got to wait for somebody to drop them.
I mean, that's going to be in the 20s at this point, probably.
Yeah.
High teens, 20s. No, I think there's a lot of a reason for the Heat for Heat fans to watch this tournament too. Before we get to the listener questions here, I mean, they released this thing on YouTube. The Heat are doing stuff on YouTube now, and it was like a feature on the scouting department. Adam Simon and Keith Askins in that group, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It's about 20 minutes long, and There's a little bit of behind the scenes of the kind of players that they're looking for. I don't think anybody would be surprising, but it was sort of interesting to hear them just sort of give voice to
Lay
it
it
and kind
out.
of crystallize the vision there. Let's get to our listener questions. Thanks to everybody who sent these in via the Locked On Heat Insider community on our subtext app. You can find the link in the show notes if you want to join. Guaranteed a chance to ask these questions to get them answered on the post-game shows, plus a whole bunch of other good stuff. This one comes from Malachi, who writes in, by trading Jimmy Butler, did the Heat just give up on the season? It feels like the Butler trade just deflated us as a team. How can this Heat team give the fans joy again? I don't think that they literally gave up on the season when they traded Jimmy Butler, but it sure feels like they gave up on the season when they traded Jimmy Butler.
I mean, it was born out of necessity, right? Like, I don't think at any point in time did they see that being the reality or what they were going to have to face in February. I think they were hoping that it could, they could kick that can down the road until the off season. It just didn't work out that way, unfortunately. And I think even in terms of the players that they acquired, those kind of fit more of the win now mode, like being complementary guys in Wiggins, Mitchell, and even Anderson to a certain degree. So I think they were still planning on winning. I think they expected it to congeal in a way that you and I both did, and we were dead wrong about that. Like, I mean, we'll own it. We thought that this was a team that was going to be invested in defense. You had two elite perimeter defenders in Wiggins and Mitchell that was going to complement already great defenders like Bam and even Ware. And it seemed like it was going to be a really nice blend, but something seems to have snapped, and it feels like it's spreading, where it was maybe one player at first kind of didn't have it, and then another player just didn't have it. Now it just feels like it's pervasive through everybody. I don't know. I don't think that I don't think they were giving up on the season, though. I really don't think that's the case.
I'm with you, right? I don't think they just punted when they traded Jimmy. They wanted to compete, and this is a great advertisement for therapy. The way the Heat approached the Jimmy Butler drama and everything since was just sort of bury your head in the sand, keep your head down, do the work, stick to business, the business of basketball, and just do it, and just not really acknowledge what they had just gone through.
Yeah.
And this is why you have to acknowledge what's going on, is because it's just like your emotions. It's why you go to therapy, right? If you just keep stuffing that stuff down, it's going to have an adverse effect on your health, right? And so
the grief and the grieving process, you have to face it head on, because if not, you're just you're covering it up, but that's only on the surface. Everything, the pain, the trauma is still down deep in there, and you can see it on a nightly basis. Like, this team just does not look 100%. So it's a great point. It might be a little too deep or psychological for some fans. Maybe it just boils down to not being good enough, and certainly that's the case. But man, you can always count on effort, and they just don't feel like they have it. Like,
they're not good enough. Larsson. They're not good enough to compete with Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City. They're not good enough for that. They're better than this, and that's what I think we need to kind of frame this as: is this team with Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, coached by Eric Spoelstra. You got good rotation players throughout the roster. They've been mostly healthy. I know they've gone through spates of kind of not having guys, but they've been way healthier this year than they were last year. And they're on their way to being 10 games under 500, where last year they were 10 games over 500, and we were kind of giving them crap for that. So,
remember, not to belabor the point a little bit, but remember those games where it was like Spo and like the 7 guys that were left, or you only had 8 or 9 healthy players available, and he would piece together whatever was available, and somehow you find a way to eke out a victory. This is like the exact opposite, or like to your point, like they're healthy, they've got everybody there, and somehow it's just not enough. This team feels a little broken right now.
More games on second night of back-to-backs? Is that what we went less games against teams coming off a second night of back-to-back, have them stay in Miami for 2 nights, and then really pick out of a hat 6 players that Eric Spoelstra doesn't get to have on the rotation.
Charlotte spent the whole weekend in Miami, and it wasn't enough. Like, I mean, it's just nothing seems to matter for this team right now.
They need therapy. Antonio writes in, why does Davion Mitchell not play more, and where was Bam? He's talking about just this game. In terms of the Bam thing, we already talked about it. Just a weird night from him. Obviously disappointing. You need more from him. I'm not trying to make excuses. In terms of the Davion Mitchell thing, they were playing from behind by double digits for most of this game. Duncan had it going. Davion Mitchell started on James Harden. Harden was not hurting them tonight. He scored like 23 points, but it took him 20 shots. He was getting to the line, and all the foul baiting was working early and then not so much late. I just think they needed shooting against this team, and that's why Davion wasn't out there.
That's fair, but I also feel like whenever they had a spurt or a little run there, it felt like he was always in the game. Like you wanted more effort plays, and there's Spo talking about Larsson after the game. It's like, well, you're getting some from Mitchell as well. Like, why not have your two effort guys out there to kind of try and spark something? I don't. It might not have led to anything, but it would still have been nice. At least you can. It feels like from a fan perspective, at least you go down trying, right?
Yeah, no problem with it. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.